Hello everyone, welcome to our animated philosophy series, where we explore timeless concepts in a modern context. Today we're diving into one of the more fascinating ideas from Ludwig Wittgenstein, his argument against the idea that words have some kind of essential, unchanging meaning. Now, many people, both today and in the past, have believed that for any concept, like game or art or sport, there must be some underlying essence that all examples of that concept share. Think of it like this: if I ask you to define what a game is, you might try to come up with a definition that applies to all games, whether it's chess, soccer, or even video games. You might say a game is something where you compete, or something with rules. But as soon as you try to pin it down, you'll notice that your definition doesn't fit every example. Let's try it. Can we really say that every game involves competition? What about solitaire, where you're playing against yourself? Or maybe you think every game has rules. Well, what about children's play, where they often make things up as they go? Wittgenstein noticed this problem too, and he challenged the very idea that a word like game has a single, fixed definition. Instead, he suggested something called the family resemblance concept. This is where things get really interesting. Picture a family. The members might all have some similarities. Maybe they all have the same eye color or similar facial features, but there's no single feature that all of them share. There's no one thing that defines the family. Some members look alike in one way, others in another, but they all share enough resemblances that you can still tell they're part of the same family. Wittgenstein argued that words, like game, work in the same way. There isn't one essential feature that all games have in common. Instead, games overlap with each other in different ways, like family members share different traits. Chess might resemble football in its competitiveness, but chess resembles puzzles in its mental challenge, and so on. These overlapping similarities are what hold the concept together, not a single defining feature. So when we use a word like game, we're not tapping into some deep, hidden essence. We're using it based on a kind of family resemblance between different activities that we've come to call games. Now, let me give you a real-world example that will make this even clearer. Imagine a student trying to define art. At first they might say, well, art is something beautiful, but then they encounter pieces of modern art, abstract, minimal, and sometimes even ugly, and realize that beauty doesn't apply. Then they might think, well, maybe art is something made with skill. But what about conceptual art, where the idea is more important than the skill used to create it? Just like with games, the student quickly finds that there's no single characteristic that covers everything we call art. Wittgenstein would point out that this difficulty arises because we're searching for a rigid definition in a place where there isn't one. Words like art are flexible. They adapt to the different ways we use them. Instead of looking for an essential meaning, Wittgenstein would tell us to focus on how the word is used in everyday life. Art, games, sports, these aren't rigid categories, but rather collections of overlapping features. Some games are competitive, others are not. Some pieces of art are beautiful, others are not. The point is that meaning isn't something fixed. It shifts and flexes depending on how the word is used. Wittgenstein's philosophy moves away from seeing language as a tool for naming fixed things and towards seeing it as something far more dynamic. He encourages us to look at how we use words in different contexts rather than trying to trap them in a strict definition. And here's why this matters in everyday life. Think about how often we find ourselves in debates or disagreements about definitions. People argue about what counts as art, or freedom, or justice, and sometimes these arguments seem endless. Wittgenstein's approach suggests that many of these debates might be based on a misunderstanding of how language works. Instead of searching for a precise, rigid definition of a word, we should recognize that meaning is often fluid, and that words gain their meaning from the way they are used in various contexts. Take the word sport. If you try to find a strict definition, you'll face similar problems. Is chess a sport? What about esports? If sports must involve physical activity, then does that exclude chess players who train their minds rigorously? And if mental challenge can count as a sport, why not esports players who compete in video games at a high level? The answer Wittgenstein offers isn't to get stuck on one feature, like physical effort or competition, but to look at the broader web of resemblances. There's no single, eternal essence of sport. Instead, sports share a network of similarities that make the word work, even if no single definition captures everything. In summary, Wittgenstein is asking us to be more flexible in how we understand language. He challenges the traditional idea that words need to have a fixed, essential meaning. Instead, we should think of words as tools, whose meanings emerge from the way we use them in real life. So the next time you find yourself stuck trying to define a word like game, art, or sport, remember Wittgenstein's family resemblance theory. Don't look for one defining feature. Look at the overlapping similarities, the connections, and how the word works in different contexts. Language is much more fluid and dynamic than we might think, and that's what makes it such a powerful tool for understanding the world. Thank you for learning with us. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights into similar echoes.